Hey everyone, it's Strange Michael. I hope you're doing well today. I have another review, and the final one until the new David Bruckner reboot on Hulu in about a week or so. I have the final review of the Hellraiser franchise. This is a movie I've never seen before. I've seen the other ones at least once. I've never seen this one, though. I've heard a lot of things. I didn't know what to expect going into it. The cover looked cool, the back of it looked cool. This is Hellraiser Judgment, which is the 10th of the franchise. I didn't know this existed until I got married 2 years ago, and I bought it, as well as the Scarlet Gospels, which came out as the first ever Clive Barker direct sequel, aside from the comic books and whatever. Between this movie and the previous film, which I just reviewed, Hellraiser Revelations, which is abominable. It's a really, really bad flick if you haven't seen this garbage. Hellraiser Judgment, I didn't know what to expect. I could have sworn the title was misspelt when I looked at this and when I got to the end credits of the movie. It is not. Apparently I'm the idiot spelling Judgment with a D-G-E-M-E-N-T. Whatever. This came out in 2018, and it is direct-to-video, just like they've all been for the last... since 2000, when Inferno came out. So 18 years of direct-to-video Hellraiser movies. What have we learned? Not much, frankly. The budgets got smaller and smaller than they got to the bottom of the barrel in the previous film. And I will tell you, I had, like, very, very small amounts of hope for this movie, especially when I knew Dimension, who made the previous one, Revelations, still made this one. I wasn't expecting much. After what I saw in Revelations this morning, I started watching this. I watched, like, the first 8 minutes of it before I went to work today. And I was kind of looking forward to coming home and watching the rest of it because of what I saw in the beginning of the movie. The prologue is about 10 minutes long, and it's pretty damn solid. And overall, this might sound like a surprise. This isn't a big praise coming from me. But overall, I kind of don't hate this movie. I kind of like it, as a matter of fact. My favorite entries in the Hellraiser franchise are typically focused around cop stories or thriller-type stories, not so much the more gothic fantasy stuff of the original 2 movies, or even the original 3 for that matter. Even when they get into more of the slasher feel in Part 3 and Part 4, it still doesn't click with me. I like more of the psychological horror, the Silent Hill-esque type stuff. That's what really resounds with me and resonates with me forever with some of these Hellraiser movies, my favorite being Inferno, for all the people who might care about that for whatever reason. I'm not the Hellraiser guy. I've never really been a fan of this franchise, aside from an entry here and there. Most of these have not stuck with me, you know? But I will tell you this, Judgment very much surprised me. It also grossed the hell out of me. If you haven't seen this film, it is probably the grossest film I've seen in this franchise. Up there with Part 1, Part 2, and Part 5 for me. Now, if you love that, if you're a gore hound, if you're a gross hound, it doesn't even have to be blood. It can be anything else. Spit, drool, sweat. If you are grossed out very easily, if you're a very squeamish person outside of blood in movies, this is not for you. If something like the Garbage Pail Kids movie got in your nerves because of how gross it was, this movie's going to be worse. I promise you. We're talking a lot of bodily fluids in this movie. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't. I was not used to seeing any of that for a while now, since I finished the first 2 films and reviewed those about a week ago. This movie really got to me. And for all the right reasons. That's what it's trying to do. And if you're trying to do that and you do it well, props to you. Great. Judgment really kind of surprised me by how much I liked it, how much I was invested in. And I'll admit, about halfway, out of this hour and 20-minute long runtime, about 45 minutes in, I started getting a little bored. But then other than that, it's kind of up there for me with like Hellseeker, which I don't hate Hellseeker, it's flawed, very flawed. But I really like this, and I almost like it more than that, which kind of surprised me. But again, I like more of the psychological Hellraiser films, just so you know. So what's the plot of Hellraiser Judgment? Well, it's very, very different from anything you've ever seen, whether Clive Barker wrote it in Scarlet Gospels, which is very different from the Hellbound Heart book that these whole things are based on. If you haven't read that, you're missing out. That's a really good sequel to a Hellraiser type of thing. This is a very weird Hellraiser movie. It's very, very different, more different than something like Revelations was. Revelations felt like a downgraded, fan-made movie. This feels like fan-made, but by the right people. And the people who are fans of like Inferno and Hellseeker and things like that. So it was right up my alley, is what I'm trying to tell you. Basically, we start off with this really slobbish, chubby-looking dude who is getting interrogated after he gets basically just knocked out and kidnapped. He gets interrogated by this guy with these scars and stuff all over his face. He's wearing these weird glasses. He's actually the director of the film, by the way. This fellow is considered the Auditor. That's what his title is. And he kind of works with Pinhead a little bit. He's some kind of demon, some kind of otherworldly entity of some sort. And he's part of a court system. And that's the thing. This movie puts a big focus on lore and judgment, really, and a court system within hell, which kind of surprised me. I'm not used to seeing that either. Really actual lore building. Outside of personal horror stories like with Inferno and Hellseeker, and even down to Deader, even Hellworld, I guess, to an extent. But I'm not used to seeing this. Actual lore building with these movies. Revelations actually contradicted the canon of the previous films and how the box works, how hell works, how you die in those worlds and whatever. None of it made any sense in Revelations. Really bad movie. I don't know what that was. I don't know if you guys heard that or not, but there was some kind of noise outside. It's not like a chainsaw, but like it died, you know? Anyway, this particular movie, it feels like it's actually made by real Hellraiser fans of some sort. But it also doesn't feel like Hellraiser fans of those original two, like I said. It feels so different, like a departure from those, but also seems to have like a love and care for that. I don't know how to explain it. It feels that way. It feels direct-to-video, but it also, like Revelations, which is kind of a compliment here, it feels like it's not just a script with Hellraiser, Pinhead, whatever added into it. It feels like an actual Hellraiser movie to expand Hellraiser a little bit. I kind of admire that. This is the last one we have of the original timeline, if you consider all these connected. It's really the last one of that. Until this new David Bruckner movie comes out that may or may not do the exact same thing. I'm not really sure, but I'm not really, I don't know, I'm just excited for the movie. I don't really care what it does. It doesn't look bad at all. At this particular point, we've had 3 people play Pinhead. This is a new recasting for Pinhead, and it works. This is more of a cop movie. Outside of that prologue with that guy doing the auditor stuff and getting interrogated and then getting tortured brutally, especially by this one guy who, like, takes his life story of all the horrifying things he's done and then eats it and then vomits it up. Dude, it is so gross. Even the first 10 minutes will tell you what kind of movie you're getting. It's too much. It's way too much, but in a good way. I mean that. It's very effective for what it's trying to do, and I really like that. I really appreciate that because it's so different, but it works. If it was any other franchise, I would love this. It doesn't matter. If it was a standalone movie, I would love this. But again, it goes kind of in a cop thriller aspect, kind of like Hellseeker, kind of like mainly my favorite, Inferno. I was kind of shocked by that as well. Didn't really expect that at all. It's kind of 2 brothers who are cops, and they get another girl that kind of comes into the case too. They run into her when they basically have a particular killer going around that's killing people. It's kind of adults, children, everybody. And this is the interesting thing too. I myself, being a Christian, am fascinated with the absolute weird obsession with, like, religious detailing in here. There's a lot of weird ways of looking at certain Bible verses. Not like an out-of-context way either. I know my Bible really well. I'm not perfect or anything, but I know my Bible really well. I've read it a lot. I studied it a lot. I wanted to be a preacher once upon a time. And I'm not one of those, like, snooty, nose-in-the-air types. But I will tell you I know it well enough to know that they're not taking things out of context for this movie, which fascinated me because that would be the easy way to go with this movie, and they didn't do that. They really didn't do that. It was kind of neat. I kind of dug it. The religious aspects to this movie kind of shocked me by how much I liked it. Usually with Hellraiser, it's just kind of God-defying type of stuff, and that was surprisingly well done here, which I guess is part of the reason why I got so engaged in this movie and why I was so kind of surprised by how it wasn't just that. It tried to do something horrific, but also biblically kind of true. You know, it kind of surprised me a lot how much people seemed knowledgeable about the Bible with this movie. It just, I don't know, it impressed me. Does that make sense? I'm more impressed than anything. But a lot of this killing serial killer story thing, this investigation by these 3 cops or whatever, all of that stuff I think really, really works for it. And we go down the supernatural path, we go down the Hellraiser path. You might be wondering, how does Pinhead get involved in this story? Not much. I don't mind the new recasting we have for Pinhead. His voice needs a little bit of a perfect modification. If they had a better budget and a better sound design for that, it could have been a lot better. But for the most part, that could have been better, frankly. But the look of him, he doesn't look bloated like like the Hellraiser Revelations Pinhead. He looks like he's always shocked all the time. He's always looking down like that in Revelations. This new guy actually looks like Doug Bradley a little bit in certain angles. He looks like Doug Bradley. The makeup looks good on him for the most part. It's a little bit of a change of costume too. This Pinhead actually has a cool, like his chest is opened up, not like the previous films, but you can see his ribs and stuff in the middle of his chest cavity. I thought that was pretty cool. Something different, you know? All of that really looked solid to me. The auditor guy I talked about with the glasses, whatever, he has cuts all over his bald head and stuff, the director of the film, that was pretty cool. I liked that. I liked the writing of the film. I liked the writing of the characters. I liked the murder mystery stuff here. Again, it kind of, in the second act, especially towards the end of the second act, transitioning to the third act, it kind of gets a little weak. I started getting a little bored. And then there was a twist that kind of surprised me a little bit. We follow really one of the main cops, kind of the older brother or whatever. He's married, has a little bit of marital troubles, mainly with his tour in Iraq or Iran or whatever overseas tour he did in the military. That's kind of damaged him mentally a little bit. And then being a cop, too, has kind of messed with him a little bit, too. This new case is pretty horrifying. One of the best things about this new case that I loved was when they find the victim and what they find inside of the victim's gut. I thought that was horrifying and such a horrifically creative idea that I can't believe I've never seen that in a Brian Keane book. You know, it kind of shocked me. This whole idea, the whole concept of this movie, really, really impressed me. And the more I watched it, like I said, the more I was invested. I was grossed out numerous times. By the way, there's a lot of nudity in this movie. A lot of nudity. A lot of blood in this movie, too. A lot of vomit. A lot of things like that. Again, it's a very, very gross movie. If you're not cut out for that, you ain't cut out for Judgment. I promise you. This movie is very, very much a lot. I think all of the performances are really solid. I think the auditor guy, I like more than anybody in the entire film. He's kind of courteous. He's got like a German accent and stuff. He's just funny. I like him. I don't know what it is about this director that played that role, but he's really good in the movie. He has some of the best lines in the film. There's a lot of great throwbacks, by the way, to previous movies. I really like that as well, including like the little puzzle box thing from Part 2. But it's like the one that the blonde-headed girl, Tiffany or whatever, was playing with, where she was just like in her room before she ever got her hands on the Lament configuration, where it's just like a bunch of blocks in a puzzle box that she had to put together. Now there's a bunch of sirens driving by. What the hell? I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to try to talk over that as well. I'm sure they're going to drive right by my house, too, aren't they? It's just going to get louder and louder, I bet. That's some bullshit. And then they just stopped. They just stopped. Wherever they are over there, they just stopped. Anyway, so I think the character acting, I think the writing and all that are really, really, really solid. Very impressive. I think the guy who directed this also wrote it as well. So he's doing a starring role, he's directing it, and he's writing it. That kind of shocks me by how good this turned out to be. Moving along, though, the look of the movie has kind of a grainy feel, just like Revelations had. But to me, the lighting, the sets, the choices for the areas they film in, to me, all of that works better. It's a grimy noir crime movie, and I like that. A noir thriller, whatever you want to call this thing. I like all that. That's my kind of thing. It's up my alley. And it worked really well for this movie, in my opinion. I recommend it on that alone. If you're a fan of that kind of thing, this is right up your alley. You should check it out just based on that alone. Let's see. There's not really any CGI in the movie. Maybe a couple of things here and there. Very, very minor things. But for the most part, like I talked about the Revelations, one of the only compliments I could give to Revelations that kind of saved that movie, just not really even saved it, just gave it one more good breath of air to give until it was dead. This movie has really, really, really good practical effects that are very, very effective for the squeamish nature of the movie. Even though the look of the movie is kind of cheap, it looks better than Revelations. It looks on par with Hellseeker, to an extent, most of the time. Not always, but about 75% of the time it looks like a Hellseeker type of movie. That being low budget as well, I think that had a bigger budget than this had, even for its time. The look of the movie, I think, it works really well. That practical effects that are used about 95% of the time, are really solid. I like the makeup especially. The makeup in pretty much everybody, including the guy who's playing Pinhead, who is not perfect for this role, but he's better than the previous guy, like I said. He looks good in the makeup, and that really goes a long way. The practical effects for the costumes, the makeup, the horrifying deaths and whatever, all of that looks really good to me. Not perfect, but it looks good. I like all of it, a lot. It adds to that, again, that feel of this movie, that squeamish, we're trying to gross you out until you puke type of stuff. This movie will get to you, I promise you. In some way, fashion, or form, judgment will get under your skin, like Hellraiser. Anyway, so I really don't have much more to say. The only thing left to talk about is the music here. It wasn't great. It was better than Revelation's music, but I was not in love with it. Does that make sense? It was a little bit of a disappointment, just like how Revelations broke my heart as a whole movie. The music there felt completely, I mean, you talk about like royalty-free, like chiptune type stuff, that's what that movie's music felt like. This feels slightly better. Still not as mildly decent as Hellworld, but better, you know? Anyway, that is pretty much all I have to say about the final, at least at this current moment, 2018 Hellraiser movie, Hellraiser Judgment. Number 10 of the franchise. This is going to have 11 movies now in October. That's crazy to me. This is very much a surprise of mine. I did not expect to like this. To own it in my collection for 2 years and not get around to watching it, that's kind of sad, frankly. But I very much enjoyed it, just like I like the poster here. And if I had to recommend it, I would, frankly. If you're a big Hellraiser fan, especially the original two, and you're kind of bummed out that none of the sequels ever tried to expand lore at all, this is really good for that. It's really, really kind of a melody for that, I think. You should check it out. I think it's really kind of surprisingly good. Surprisingly decent, at least above average. I don't know how much I'd use the word good with this, but for me it was good in my personal taste. I think it's well made for what it is, for the kind of budget it had, for the kind of goals it had. It's well made and it's well done and well executed. It's not perfect, like I said, but it's mostly solid. If I had to rate the film on a 5-star basis, I'd give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked it. I was very surprised by how much I liked it. And again, I'd recommend it. So what do you think about Hellraiser Judgment? Do you love this one? Do you hate it? What do you think about all that? Put it down in the comment section down below. Do you agree with me and the things I had to say? Do you disagree with me and hate my guts? I would love to hear all that down below too. Or you can just drop a dislike, because no one can see it but me and you. Anyway, 3 out of 5 stars for me. I enjoyed it. I was very surprised by how much I liked this. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below again. Thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you, and I'll rank these movies when the new David Bruckner movie comes out. God willing, I'm alive. I made it through 10 of these movies, soon to be 11, and I read all the books. Not all the comics. I haven't even touched those yet, but still. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below again, guys. God bless you all. Goodbye.